She grabbed the microphone from the DJ, pointed directly at me in front of 200 guests and said, "And I will never forget these words for as long as I live. Someone needs to tell the cleaning lady that this is a black tie wedding, not a church rummage sale." The entire ballroom went silent. I am 76 years old. I have buried a husband. I have raised children through storms that would have broken most people. I have survived things that woman couldn't begin to imagine. And I stood there in the dress I had saved up 3 months to buy, while laughter rippled across that room like a wave I couldn't outrun. But here's what nobody in that ballroom knew. Here's what she didn't know. My son was already walking toward that microphone. And what he was about to say would change everything for her, for the family, for every single person who laughed that night. This is my story. And I need you to hear all of it. Before I go any further, if you've ever been underestimated because of your age, your appearance, or where you come from, I want you to hit that like button right now. And if you're new here, please subscribe. I share stories about real life, real dignity, and what happens when people forget that kindness costs nothing. Now let's get back to that ballroom because it gets so much worse before it gets better. My name is Mary. I'm 76 years old and I live alone in the same house I've lived in for 41 years. The house where I raised my son Elliot, from the time he was 6 weeks old until the day he left for college with 2 suitcases and a jar of my homemade strawberry jam. Elliot is 43 now. He's kind, patient, and has his father's eyes. After his first marriage ended quietly and without drama about 7 years ago, I worried he would close himself off. Instead, he threw himself into his work, his community, and eventually into someone new. Her name was Cressida. When Elliot first told me about her, his voice had a lightness I hadn't heard in years. He said she was brilliant, driven, and that she made him laugh in a way he had forgotten was possible. I was happy for him. Genuinely happy. I didn't ask too many questions. I didn't meddle. I simply waited for him to bring her home in his own time. That time came about 4 months into their relationship. She arrived at my door in a car that probably cost more than I made in my last 5 years of working, wearing sunglasses indoors, and carrying a tiny dog that looked at me with more judgment than any animal should be capable of. She shook my hand barely, and spent most of the dinner looking at her phone beneath the table, smiling at something I wasn't privy to. I told myself she was nervous. I made every excuse I could. Elliot loved her. That was enough for me. Or so I thought. The engagement happened fast. 8 months after they met, Elliot called me on a Tuesday evening and said, "Mom, we're getting married in the spring." There was that lightness again in his voice, and I held on to it. The wedding planning, however, was a different story entirely. I was not consulted. I was not included. Every time I reached out to Elliot to ask how things were going, he would say Cressida has it all handled with such easy confidence that I didn't want to trouble him. I sent a card to her offering to help with anything. Flowers, favors, food, anything at all. I never received a response. The invitation arrived 6 weeks before the ceremony. It was beautiful thick cream cardstock with gold foil lettering. But tucked inside was a small printed card I've never seen at any wedding before or since. It read, "Dress code, black tie formal. We kindly ask that guests dress to reflect the elegance of the occasion." I read it 3 times. I understand what black tie means. I've attended black tie events. I am old, not uneducated. I went to 4 different stores over 2 weekends. On my budget, I live on Social Security and a small pension. Formal gowns are not exactly plentiful. But I found one. A deep navy dress with a modest beaded neckline, floor length, elegant in its simplicity. The woman at the shop told me I looked lovely. I believed her. Pressed it. I wore my pearl earrings, the ones Walter gave me on our 30th anniversary. I did my hair. I looked in the mirror before I left and I thought, I am Elliot's mother. I belong at this wedding. I had no idea what was waiting for me. The venue was extraordinary. An old restored hotel downtown, crystal chandeliers, round tables draped in white linen, flowers everywhere that must have cost a small fortune. I found my seat, table 11, which I later learned was the farthest table from the head table, tucked near the exit to the kitchen, and I sat quietly and watched my son marry a woman I barely knew. The ceremony was beautiful. Elliot cried. I cried. Even the small dog, who was apparently the ring bearer, behaved himself. The reception began warmly enough. I spoke to a few of Elliot's friends, people I recognized from his life over the years. I ate my dinner. I sipped my water. I watched my son dance with his new wife, and I felt genuinely a complicated but sincere happiness. Then came the toasts. Cressida's sister, Brianna, gave a long and breathless speech about how perfect the couple was. Her college roommate, a woman named Portia, gave another. Then Cressida herself took the microphone, and what began as gratitude slowly became something else entirely. She thanked the venue. She thanked the florist. She thanked her parents and her bridesmaids by name, each with a glittering compliment. And then, and I don't know what made her look across that room and find me specifically, she paused, tilted her head, and said, "I also want to acknowledge all of our wonderful guests who really dressed to impress tonight." She smiled. The room smiled. And then, although she let the word hang, "Someone needs to tell the cleaning lady that this is a black tie wedding, not a church rummage sale." The laughter started before she even finished the sentence. I want to tell you that I stood up immediately, that I had some sharp, dignified response prepared. But the truth is, I sat very still, my hands folded in my lap, my face completely calm. Not because I wasn't hurt, but because I have lived 76 years and I know that dignity, real dignity, is something you keep inside yourself even when someone is doing everything they can to take it from you. I sat still. And then I heard a chair scrape back at the head table. My son walked to that microphone the way I've seen him walk toward every difficult thing in his life. Steadily, without hurry, with a quiet in his face that people sometimes mistake for passivity, but is actually something far more powerful. Cressida held the microphone toward him with a smile, assuming he was going to add to the toast, to the warmth, to the evening she had so carefully constructed. He took the microphone. He looked out at the room. And then he said, "Before we go any further with this celebration, I need to share something with all of you." The room quieted. The woman my wife just referred to as the cleaning lady, that woman in the navy dress at table 11, is my mother, Mary. She is 76 years old. She raised me alone after my father passed when I was 9. She worked 2 jobs for 11 years so that I could go to college. She drove 4 hours round trip every single time I was sick in my dorm room freshman year, because I wouldn't ask anyone else for help. He paused. The room was absolutely silent. She also, he continued, and his voice was steady as stone, is the reason this wedding is happening at all. Because 3 months ago, when I thought the venue deposit had fallen through, and we were going to lose this date, my mother transferred her entire emergency savings into my account without telling me. I only found out last week when I called the bank about something unrelated. I felt the blood leave my face. I had not told him. I had never intended to tell him. She told me not to mention it, Elliot said, and I could see his jaw tighten just slightly. She said it was a gift and gifts don't come with explanations. But I think when someone gives everything they have so that you can have the wedding of your dreams, and then gets mocked in front of 200 people at that wedding for what she's wearing, I think the truth matters. He set the microphone down on the table. He did not say another word. He walked directly to table 11, took my hand and led me to the dance floor as the band, stunned into action by the venue coordinator, began to play. We danced, my son and I, in the middle of that silent shifting room, and I wept into his shoulder like I hadn't wept since Walter's funeral. The room never fully recovered. Cressida's mother found her in the hallway outside the ballroom. I don't know what was said, but 2 of Elliot's friends told me later that the conversation lasted nearly 20 minutes and Cressida did not return to the reception for the rest of the evening. The guests, many of whom had laughed or at least smiled, spent the remainder of the night unusually subdued. Several of them came to find me. Some offered apologies. Some, the more honest ones, said nothing but sat with me for a while, refilling my water, asking about Walter, asking about Elliot as a boy. Those were the people I was grateful for. Portia, the college roommate, came and sat beside me near the end of the night. She said, "I want you to know I didn't laugh. I wanted you to know that." I told her I appreciated it. I don't know if it was true, but it was kind of her to say. The honeymoon went on as planned. Elliot and Cressida left 2 days later for 2 weeks abroad. I went home to my house, fed my cat, and sat at my kitchen table for a long time thinking about what love actually costs and who tends to pay it. When Elliot came back, he called me from the airport. Before he even said hello, he said, "I'm sorry, Mom." I told him he had nothing to apologize for. He said, I don't mean for the wedding. I mean for not seeing it sooner. I knew what he meant. As for Cressida, she called me 12 days after they returned. It was a Sunday morning. I was in the garden when my phone rang, and I almost didn't answer because I didn't recognize the number. She had called from a different phone, I think because she wasn't sure I would pick up if I saw her name. She spoke for a long time. I listened. She told me about her own grandmother, a woman who had died when Cressida was 14, a woman she had adored and then lost and never fully healed from. She told me she had spent years building a version of herself that was polished and controlled and impressive, because being soft had only ever gotten her hurt. She told me she didn't expect me to forgive her, but that she needed me to know she understood what she had done. I am 76 years old. I have forgiven things far heavier than this. I told her, you are married to my son. That means you are family. And in this family we don't keep score. But we also don't forget. And the next time you're tempted to make someone small so that you feel larger, I want you to remember that room. I want you to remember how that felt. Not for my sake. For yours. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, yes, ma'am. And that was that. I want to leave you with something I've been turning over in my mind since that night. There is a particular kind of cruelty that targets people who seem safe to hurt. The elderly. The quiet. The ones who look like they won't fight back. Cressida chose me because I was sitting alone at a corner table in a modest dress, and she assumed I had no power in that room. What she didn't understand, what so many people don't understand, is that power isn't about what you're wearing or where you're seated or how much money is in your account. Power is what you've built in the people who love you. My son didn't stand up because I asked him to. He stood up because of 43 years of strawberry jam and 4-hour drives, and an emergency savings account emptied without a second thought. He stood up because of everything that passed between us in all those ordinary, invisible moments that nobody puts in a speech. Cressida spent months planning a perfect wedding. She spent money and energy and attention on every visible detail. And she never thought once to look at the woman at table 11 and wonder what story was sitting there. That is the thing about people who have lived long enough. We carry so much more than what shows on the surface. Every wrinkle has a reason. Every worn dress has a history. Every quiet old woman in the corner of the room has probably survived things that would bring the loudest person in the building to their knees. I am Mary. I am 76 years old. I am not the cleaning lady. And I have never, not for one single second since that night, regretted spending that money. Because I was there. I watched my son get married. And at the end of the evening, I danced with him. That is enough. That will always be enough. If this story moved you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you haven't already, leave a comment below. Tell me, has anyone ever underestimated you and lived to regret it? I read every single one. Until next time, be kind to the quiet ones. You never know what they're holding.
Thank you so much for watching and supporting this story. May it inspire strength when you feel weak, may it give you wisdom when you face difficult choices, and may it remind you that courage and self-respect always matter. Till next story, take care, goodbye, God bless you.